Hello everyone, and welcome back to the Dance Education Podcast. I'm your host, I'm Elyanna Bradshaw. I am newly married, and I am starting this because I've actually been working on this for a really long time. I just feel like a lot of people don't really realize that I've been working on this for a long time. A little bit about me. I am a former professional dancer. I am retired. I have been dancing for nearly 20 years, and then I decided to be a ballet teacher. Why, do you ask? That is something we're gonna go along and discover. So today is our opening podcast, and I am so excited to be introducing to you guys the Dance Education Podcast by Life On Pointe. Life On Pointe started 10 years ago, and not many people know this, but I was really just so passionate about sharing my process, sharing the process between a student to a pre-professional to a professional dancer, and I was determined to get there. I love doing what I do. I am so proud of everything that I've achieved, and not many people actually know what I've achieved. And so I am introducing you to the very first podcast of Dance Education Podcast by Life On Pointe, where we talk honestly about the art and science of dance education. I am Elyanna Kim Bradshaw, still getting used to that. And I believe the way we teach dance can not only transform not just how dancers move, but how we live. Little bit about me. Also, I should probably tell you to subscribe to this podcast, because who doesn't love that? If you love dance education content, if you are a parent of a dancer and you are like, finally, somebody that is going to tell me all that I need to know about my kids' dance practice, then you are in the right place. If you are a dancer that's like, I'm trying to figure out what I want to do with my life with dance, you're in the right place. And if you're just interested in dance education, you are in the right place, my friend. So I am a homeschooled Bakersfield girl. I grew up, was born and raised in Bakersfield, California, moved to LA for a little bit to go dance professionally, and then moved back to Bakersfield. And I married the love of my life, who I met in Bakersfield, but he was from Fresno, and he moved to my little world here. So I am now a dance educator. I don't like to call myself just a ballet teacher, because I don't just teach ballet. I teach how to move, how to dance. I teach a lot of different things, and I don't teach ballet the typical way many people teach ballet. So I trained with the Royal Academy of Dance with a teacher whom I am still friends with to this day. She was younger than I am standing before you today when she started teaching me, and so that was nearly 20 years ago. I became a professional dancer at the age of 18 and did my first season with a company that was started after the breakoff of the Ballet Ruse in Los Angeles. I also danced with Pasadena Dance Theater, and I also did a few things touring around doing lots of freelance work. I am not an award-winning competition dancer. I trained only ballet, and I had some modern experience. I love Graham style. That is one of my favorites. And I found my love of different forms of dance from there. I did take contemporary for a little bit, but I am a bunhead. That is what they used to call us that didn't take any other style of dance. They called us bunheads, and it's just because all we did was ballet. But that's what I was most passionate about. So I studied with the Royal Academy of Dance when I was younger. I went from grade 3 all the way through to advanced 2, determined to take solo seal. Did I take solo seal? No. A lot of different things happened, and I was not able to. But I did a lot of things that I really enjoyed doing as a dancer. And I got to enjoy a lot of different opportunities doing it. And yeah, I'm happy with my life as a dancer. I went with the Royal Academy of Dance and trained there, and eventually I became a professional dancer. I competed at YAGP 2 times, once in 2018, once in 2019. I was 17 and 18 at the time. And right after concluding my Advanced 2 in the Royal Academy of Dance, I decided to take my teacher, Jose Correal, who is now a ballet master and I believe the director of the Royal Ballet School at White Lodge. He trained me for a little while. And he had me take my American Ballet Theater exam. And I was not planning on doing this. It seemed really hard, and it was really hard. It was one of the biggest challenges, I think, of any of the exams I had ever taken. So I ran it by one of my really good friends and a teacher of mine who's taught me for about 10 years. His name is Philip Pegler. He was a former ballet master for the Royal Ballet, and I was very lucky to dance under some of the best teachers in the world. And yeah, he was like, you should go for it. You definitely need to do this, especially if you want to be a professional dancer. So I did it. Right after that exam, I passed with merited honors, and I was really proud of myself because I worked my butt off for that exam. I loved the American Ballet Theater training curriculum. I thought it was great. I enjoyed my experience, and one day I hope to actually be certified in teaching it. But for now, I'm a Royal Academy of Dance girly, and it is something that I love. I grew up with the Royal Academy of Dance, and it has taught me so much about dance education. I took exams my whole life, studied classical ballet very intensely. I went to various summer intensives. I loved American Ballet Theater. It was one of my dream companies. I don't know anybody that doesn't have American Ballet Theater on their dream list, but that's why when I got to do the American Ballet Theater training curriculum, I was so excited to have that opportunity. I ended up doing that, and then right after that, I sent my reel off to several professional schools as well as companies, and I landed a couple, and one of the ones that I had landed was close to home in Los Angeles, California with Pacific Ballet Dance Theater. I danced with them for a season, and then I broke away from them and danced a season of Nutcracker with Pasadena Dance Theater. That was one of the most intense seasons of my life with dance and just in life in general, but with dance, it was one of the most intense seasons. That season of the Nutcracker took it out of me, man. I was so tired. It was like running a marathon. We did so many shows. We had, I believe, like 20 shows. It was so much fun, and I just loved doing what I was doing. And then COVID hit, and I needed to figure out what I was going to do with my life. So my parents encouraged me to go to college, and I was like, I'm not going to go to college and waste a bunch of money and not know what I'm going to do. So I did a little bit of research, and I found that the Royal Academy of Dance actually had a dance education bachelor's degree. And so I decided to do some more research. I spoke with Patty Ashby, who's the head of the Royal Academy of Dance. She's a director of the US branch, and she explained it to me a little bit. I met with a guidance counselor from the UK that was doing it, and during COVID, I started my bachelor's in dance education, and they are partnered with the University of Bath, so that is where my bachelor is coming from. But I was a homeschool girl that did not take ACTs or SATs or anything like that. I did not feel academically smart. I was schooled with the unschooled method. I definitely learned a lot, and I met all of the regulations. However, I just wasn't very academic, and so I knew this was going to be a really big challenge for me. And it was not something I really wanted to do, to be honest with you, but over time, I actually really fell in love with it. But in order to understand what I'm going to be talking about in this podcast, it's important for you to understand my background. So I was, in my early dance career, I had been able to notice a lot of dance studio culture issues at a very young age. I was dancing with my teacher. Her name is Jana, and she had taught me from the time I was very little. We followed her all over Bakersfield. And when I say we followed her all over Bakersfield, we danced in closets. We danced in the street. We danced everywhere we could. We would follow her to the ends of the earth if it required. She was the best ballet teacher in town, and there was no question about it. And she was hidden from the world. She was somebody that just doesn't get involved in the politics or drama of studio culture. And we always really appreciated that. She always had a more conservative mind. She didn't teach raunchy choreography, not that ballet was really raunchy or anything like that, but she just was very determined to teach ballet the way she felt it should be taught, and she taught it really well. She still teaches to this day, and she still teaches very well. But one of the things that she always had about her that I've always appreciated for years and years was the fact that she always was willing to learn. She was always learning. She was always researching, always looking things up. She was always teaching from a perspective that nobody else was teaching from, which was really from a dance science perspective, from a psychological perspective. She just had this way of teaching such an amazing way that brought about such a healthy environment. It brought about effective teaching and essentially really did help me get to where I got to. Now, she always says that she could have never taken me to a professional level, but really in all reality, she did. Anytime that I would go away to professional company intensives, she would always come back and say, "What did you learn? Teach me what they taught you." And so I learned at a very early age how to observe and soak up information and be able to share it with other people. And so she was really great. And then at about the age, I had started with her at 7, and then about 6 years later, so about the age of 12, I had just been dancing on pointe for about a year-ish. I think I was about 12 going into 13. And she said, if you want to be a professional ballet dancer, you need to go somewhere that you're going to be pushed. And because she had such a refined way of teaching, she taught a very specific way, and it was more slow in comparison. I think people would call it slow, but it's actually far more effective, I believe. She taught a little bit more, quote unquote, slowly than other teachers taught, and she had a much slower class pace rather than your typical ballet class where it is pliés to grand allegro and you do all of it in the span of an hour and you are going for it. And there's not really a whole lot of time to breathe, not a whole lot of room for corrections other than just the general ones. So for the purpose of this podcast and just not getting sued and maybe a few other things, I'm not going to mention the names of the studios that I have been to or worked with or anything like that, just because I've never been really good at keeping my mouth shut about things. I notice a lot of toxic culture that needs to be talked about. Parents, teachers, students are all sick and tired of the drama and the politics and all of that. And so I'm going to share my story from my perspective. Not everyone has to agree with my story, but this is what I experienced. So I was looking at my age when I was in about 13 in 2012 to 2013. I looked for a dance studio, and I went to a dance studio that was known for their more balancing style. They were much more fast paced. They were a bigger studio, and it was a culture shock, let me tell you. But one of the interesting things that I was able to reflect on was the fact that there was not a space for vulnerability. There was not a space for honesty. And it was very authoritative. It was a very authoritative space. And I soon realized that I didn't respond well to an authoritative space. I loved ballet. And let me tell you, when I say I loved ballet, I cannot tell you how much I love ballet. And one of the sad things about being in this studio was the fact that I actually lost a lot of love for ballet because I was so beaten down mentally. I would ask every week the teacher for corrections and they wouldn't give me. I would work on them and all that stuff. I worked at home. I worked so hard because I really wanted it. And I would ask these teachers for corrections and they would give me these very generic corrections and they would never tell me how to fix it. So then it came about. My mom was always a very honest parent. My parents both are very just honest and direct people. There's no other way to describe it. And my mom had shared with the studio that I was dancing at another studio, but it wasn't going to conflict with anything. And they essentially told her, and this is where we learned about studio politics, that if I didn't dance only at this place, that I wasn't going to get the roles, that I wasn't going to ever get lead roles. I wasn't going to do any of that. You had to dance at that studio. So my mom asked me, she said, "What do you want to do?" And I said, "I want to my dream is to do solo seal, which is part of the Royal Academy of Dance. I said, my dream is to do solo seal, and they don't teach that here. And so I'm going to continue dancing at the 2 different studios. It doesn't matter to me. And I was very lucky that not only did my little brain be able to think long term, but I had parents that taught me how to think long term. I also had a teacher that taught me how to think long term, and I could see past a lead role that I really did want. In my heart, I really wanted a lead role that I had never danced before, and something that would challenge me, and I would be on stage and I would be able to share the joy of dance like I always love to do. But I knew deep down that it wasn't going to get me to where I needed to go. So I kept going at it. I was shamed, downright shamed, for my technique or my inability. I got very injured at one point, and the turning point for me was I had taken one of my exams at with a Royal Academy of Dance studio, and I really enjoyed the environment there. It was a bigger studio, and it was also in Los Angeles. It was not an ideal situation for me to go back and forth to this place. And at this time, there was only really a couple of dance studios that gave really good ballet. That was Jana and this other one. So then I decided, after a class where I was just so beaten down, I was so unhappy, and I ended up leaving. I won't go too much into detail about the story, but I ended up leaving that studio in the middle of a class because I was shamed for being injured. I was told that if I couldn't do the exercise, I would be asked to leave. So I left. I picked up my bag. I left. I never went back. And I was young. I was not a grown adult. I had a lot of issues connecting with peers. I had a lot of issues with adults and these authoritative figures. I would ask questions, and they didn't really like that. And I discovered that later in life, a lot of people don't love it when you ask questions. I noticed that this was happening to a lot of dancers, and I was young. I was about 15, 16 when that happened, and so I decided I wasn't going back. So I told my mom, hey, we're not coming back here. So I continued dancing with Miss Jana, and then we went to Los Angeles Ballet Academy, where I danced with Andrea Perez Gutierrez. She is a Royal Academy of Dance examiner now, but she has raised several professional dancers, was a former studio owner, very successful career in that. I also danced, this is where I met Philip Pegler as well, former Royal Ballet master and studio owner of his own, and also with Jose Correal. Jose was an incredible teacher. All of them were incredible teachers. I love all of them. I am very close with Philip and Jana very closely, and me and Miss Andrea nod from a distance. And same with Jose. He's just a really wonderful coach. I loved working with him. He pushed me in a way that no one else could, having that American ballet theater background. It was very interesting having a very different experience with each teacher, and I loved his style of teaching. He was very hard. He had such a high expectation. Not saying that anybody else didn't, but he made it known that his expectations were extremely high, and he inspired us to meet them every single time. And so it was really hard going from a studio where I felt really broken down. The teachers and adults around us were shaming the kids. We were competing for attention. We were not celebrated. And it was like, I remember going in, I was always thrown in as the understudy. It was like, for me, it felt like a taunt. For a 15-year-old, it's going to feel like a taunt when it's like, you're told that you won't get roles because you dance at another studio, and yet you're understudied for every lead role. It really sucked. I'm not gonna lie. And it really did a downbeat on my confidence, but I decided, it's really hilarious. There's a Angelina ballerina story that talks about dancing. The storyline is literally, it's actually one of the favorites of my little kids, but the story is actually how she gets sick and she goes and she performs badly, and she's used to getting these lead roles, but she gets a smaller role because she danced so badly. And her mom is talking to her about going and doing your best and doing your part and all of that. So I decided that I was going to be Angelina a ballerina in this situation, and I was going to be my very best. I was going to give my all, and I was going to stick it to them. And I did end up getting to dance a more forward leading role. It wasn't a full lead role, but I did end up dancing a forward leading role in a work that was created for, not for us, it was actually for the ballet company that they were doing, but I was such a great understudy that I was able to fill in. So it was really hard from going from that environment into an environment where people actually cared about my career decisions. And at the same time, there were people that I was taught at this studio in LA that didn't take me seriously. And it also sucked. Like, I had a really hard time with that. And I was like, I am one of the hardest working people. I have asked for corrections. No one is giving me what I need. And not in the sense that Jana wasn't giving me what she needs. She did all the research. She tried so hard, and she would always tell me, you know what, I don't have enough education and I don't know enough to get you there. So I worked with Philip Pegler a lot, and he was one of the ones that took me seriously, told me what I needed to do, and even then tried to help me the best of my ability to make it there. And then I had Jose, who was very direct. He told it like it was. And that was what I appreciated most about him, is that he was so direct and he was very clear on what he thought I should do. He knew that I was going to disagree with it, but still told me what I needed to do to reach the goals that I had. And from there, I followed what he shared and everything. And it was very funny. I went to a company audition for a school that he told me to go to, and I got horrendously sick, like fever, almost passed out. My mom would remember this. We went to Houston, and I was literally so sick in the audition. I couldn't dance. I couldn't do hardly anything. And for me, that was a sign that I wasn't ready. I was like, you know what? Obviously, this is too much stress. I don't know what I'm going to do. So I think my mom actually had called Philip Pegler and was like, hey, this is what happened. And he sent me this very nice text and was like, this happens. You just got to keep going for it. So I kept going for it. I loved being in the ballet company. When I got to that space, I got to dance many lead roles, many soloist roles. I joined as an apprentice and had the opportunity to actually dance many solo roles, and was given many soloist and pas de deux roles, and I loved it. It was so much fun, but the environment was not good. And this has always been something that I'm like, what is the problem? What is the issue? Why can't we have a good environment? Why is everything so toxic? This is something that I've had in the back of my mind since I was 13 years old, that ballet had this toxic culture. And I thought, because I wasn't around, I didn't grow up in a toxic culture with my teacher, Jana, I didn't know that was normal. And so when I went into the company and discovered that it was actually extremely normal and that this was a very normal thing, then I realized that it was very difficult. And so I felt at home on stage. The company life gave me unforgettable moments. I loved it. I worked so hard. At the time when I was in the company, I actually learned how to run my own business. It's actually what paid my way through dancing professionally. It was very difficult, but I did it and was able to achieve a lot of things that I never thought I would be able to achieve. And not just in dance, but also in life and my ability to lead. It was unlike anything that I had ever experienced. And I'm just, to this day, I would not be where I am at without the people that talked badly about me, without the people that had strengthened me, without the people that had dragged me into all kinds of drama. I would not be that person I am today. So after this chapter, as this chapter is ongoing in my company life, I had actually run into something that I had been told when I was training. And one of the things that I was told when I was training, and it was just, I chop it up to, there was no malicious intent. It was just bad advice. That's all it was. I had a teacher pull me aside, and she didn't do it in a very nice way. But when I was dancing and I was training, I had this teacher pull me aside while I was eating. I don't remember what I was eating. I don't even remember. But she was like, don't you think carrots or maybe some vegetables would be better than that? And I looked at her and I said, excuse me? I was probably about 17. And she was like, I think it would be really good for you if you lost a little bit of weight. And I said to her, you're crazy and I'm not listening to you. In my head, I said it a little bit nicer than that out loud. But in my head, I was like, what in the heck are you talking about? I am extremely physically fit. I don't know what you're talking about. So then it got brought up between another teacher of mine and my mom. And he shared with her how I wasn't strong the way I needed to be. And this was actually the right way to do it. One, he went to my mom, not to me directly, and he told her what I needed to do. He said she needs a lot of strengthening, and I don't know if it's her eating habits or if she just needs to go to the gym, but she needs to do some strengthening. So then my mom had this conversation with me, and my mom was very careful about making sure it was framed in a way that I was not going to have an eating disorder. Well, in the back of my mind, the one person that did not go to my parent but came to me and said, you need to lose weight, it got in my head. And I didn't know it got in my head at the time. Never had body image issues. I had never dealt with anything like that. I had never dealt with weight issues. But this one little comment, and not from the teacher that went to my mom directly to ask her to have the conversation, but this teacher that went behind my mom's back and told me alone that I needed to do that, got into my subconscious, and I began to, when things got really stressful, not eat. And I didn't realize that it was a psychological thing that went back into this root. But after years of dealing with this and talking to a life coach and a therapist and all these different things, I learned so much about it in a way that I didn't know. That it was going to, like, how the subconscious things that even if you disregard it and refuse to believe things that people say ridiculous things all the time, but sometimes those ridiculous things can seep into your subconscious. This is why I'm extremely big on the parents being involved in the dancer's career, because one person made a passive-aggressive comment that was made to me as an underage girl. This shaped the next 6 years of my life. So when I was in the company, I was very stressed. I was running my own business. There was a lot of life stress, and the company environment was not the best. I did not feel well supported. I was having a really difficult time. And because I was so stressed, I started losing tons of weight. I was dancing 8 hours a day. I was working about another 6 hours a day as a housekeeper. So I was running up and down stairs. I was cleaning penthouses in LA. I was doing all the things. It was hard work, and I was losing so much weight. I think by July of 2019, I had reached 98 pounds, and I was 5'5". And I was very skinny. I was not very strong. I was getting stronger, actually. You could see it in my body, how ripped I was getting. But I was so underweight. I was unhealthily underweight. My eating was a mess all over the place. And I have shared a little bit about this before, actually, but now I'm actually on the other side of it finally. And so I can actually talk about it from a very different perspective, not from a perspective of being in it. So I was very stressed, but this subconscious thought had started it, and I still didn't have any body image issues. I was just stressed, and every time I was stressed, I would say to myself, I don't want to eat. And so it affected not only my dance life, but COVID actually, honestly, I know that COVID was so devastating for people, but honestly, COVID saved my life. I think I would have ended up in the hospital had COVID not happened. So after my season with Pasadena Dance Theater, dancing several shows, I was dancing every day for months. I moved back home on December 23rd, 2019, and COVID hit a couple months later. I was planning on going back to LA, going back into a company. I was planning on all of that, and COVID hit and the world froze. And during that time, I had a very difficult time because I didn't realize how deep I was in this eating disorder. And my mom had noticed it, and she was on me all the time. And it was all in love. She actually got me to the life coach that I was seeing that had worked with girls with eating disorders and all different kinds of things. I struggled so badly, but my mom was so supportive. She didn't always know the right answers, but she did everything in her power to give me what I could so I could be healthy. So I had gone through this process, and I was in therapy. I was with a life coach. I was at the time surrounded by a friend group that was really supportive. I was with my ex-boyfriend at the time, who was also extremely supportive of my journey. He would always cook food that was really nourishing and really help me overcome it. And if it wasn't for my mom catching it, I don't think I would have known that I had it, but she really caught it. She led me to the help that I needed. I was surrounded by really good people, and together, all of them really helped me. And so after that, it was 2020. I had spent the next 4 years of my life overcoming one passive-aggressive comment. And I think about that a lot sometimes, because I think about the fact that how could one small passive-aggressive comment and I was very confident, I had tough skin, but there was these subconscious things that I didn't know were in my mind, and it really affected me. One little passive-aggressive comment affected me. And I know that it wasn't out of malicious intent. I know that the person that shared it she had no ill intention. She was trying to be helpful, and it just wasn't. And unfortunately, that happens a lot in the dance world and in dance education when you're looking at this. Fast forward a few years, go back to 2020. So in 2020, previous years, I had already been teaching. I had been teaching master classes. I was a professional dancer. I did master classes. I taught some ballet. I guested some places and wasn't super serious about it, but I enjoyed it. I found that I really enjoyed teaching, and thought about maybe if however long we're here in COVID, I will pursue this dance degree. So then I ended up getting into the dance degree that I had mentioned earlier in this podcast, and I decided to pursue my dance education degree. I thought to myself, if I never go back to professional dancing, I know that I love ballet, and I know that I could be a good teacher because I had great teachers who saw the teacher in me. All three of the teachers that I worked very closely with. The reason why I mention Gianna, Jose, and Philip are because they were all teachers that I worked with very closely. I did work with other teachers. I've worked with 15 plus teachers in my early dance career, but these are the three that made the most impact on me. And Gianna always taught me to think like a teacher. She thought it would make me a better student, and she thought it would make me a better dancer, and she was right. Philip also really fostered the teacher in me and would tell me, you should really consider teaching, and you should really consider just teaching and coaching and all of this stuff. And even Jose was sharing with me that the way I trained made it sound like I knew how to teach it whenever I would share what I was doing and things like that. And I decided after COVID, if I didn't get into a company, that I was going to open up my own dance school and I was going to teach dance. So I got a call from a former teacher of mine asking me to come and teach for her. And so I taught for her for 3 years. Unfortunately, we parted ways on a sour note, but I learned that I loved to teach at that studio. I love all the kids. I miss all the kids. And I'm just so thankful that I got the opportunity to discover my true love. I love dancing. I love performing. But more than dancing and performing, I love teaching. So I had the opportunity to do a guesting and all of that. And I realized, I was like, I feel more at home getting these dancers ready than I do on stage doing it myself. And not that I wasn't grateful for the opportunity to perform. I loved it. It was a great experience for me, but I realized that the stage just wasn't my home anymore. And my home was the studio working with the kids. So I said to myself, you know what? I'm gonna retire from dancing. And everyone thought I was crazy. And then unfortunately, me and the studio fell out. And so then I was back to square one. I was like, what am I going to do? I'm getting this dance education degree. I had testing different frameworks that I was developing at studio in a very small way, in a very minute way. And I met one of my best friends, but also a student who became a professional dancer with Lions Ballet. She's a trainee there. And she's also done a little bit of freelancing, and just so proud of her and her achievement. She truly has, yes, it's a testament to her teachers, but she put in the work and she overcame the hurdles that she had to overcome. So I decided I'm going to retire from dancing. And go into teaching. Then me and this studio broke up. We'll say it like that. For the summer was floating. So I went to Dallas for a month and danced professionally with a company as a principal artist. And I was really lucky. It was such a good experience. I loved doing it. It was so much fun. I got to tour different places in Texas and got to dance with some wonderfully amazing people. It was a true company experience all over again in a hyper positive environment. They were so kind and so loving and so invested. They listened to all of our stories. They included us in all these different decisions. They pushed us in a way that was healthy and safe. And I learned how to love dance even more. And forgive the dogs barking in the background. We live on a farm. But I learned that I loved dance so much and that someone really could do it. There was an ability to set aside your pride and have a really positive environment because you decided that you wanted to learn, you wanted to educate, and you wanted to be educated. And this company at Zion Dance Project was a huge pivotal moment. I loved it. They invited me to stay, and I just was like, I can't stay. I have other things that I want to do and want to pursue, and I want to be a dance teacher. And I got a call when I came back and went and taught for another studio here in town. I've thoroughly enjoyed teaching for them, and you guys will see them a lot on my social media and things like that. But I loved teaching for them, and it was so wonderful. But in that process, I realized that in pursuing my degree and in my understanding of pedagogy and dancers' well-being, I realized that I'm a specialized teacher. And it was actually Philip that told me, he said, you are a ballet specialist. And that is rare these days. And I had met a few dancers that wanted to pursue a professional career in different avenues, whether it was professional ballet, teaching, dance science, dance psychology, different gambit of things. And I realized there's no one there to help them. There's no one there to tell them what their options are, how to pursue this at all. There's no one there helping you with your options. And that was something that I would have killed for when I was dancing. I would have killed to understand what my options were. Maybe it wouldn't have been so painful, but I call it a blessing because I've always been really good at turning opportunities that I never had into opportunities for dozens of others. And even if it impacted one person or two people or three people, I don't care how many it impacts, to be honest. If I can give one person the hope and the option that you will be able to do this, my goodness, I have done my job and far beyond what I could have ever thought that I could do. I decided to open up. So Life On Pointe already existed in 2015 before I was a professional dancer. I was actually documenting my journey, and you can still find it to this day. You can find 15-year-old Elyanna going for it. You can find me at 15 years old training. All of my videos are there through getting into the professional dance space, into teaching. Everything is documented. And I've been documenting this since 2015. And it was a beautiful, wonderful time, and it has evolved. And my original dream, though, was to always make an impact with Life On Pointe. That's why I named it Life On Pointe, because it's not just about dance. Dance is a part of life, but dance is not life itself. And so I wanted to bring dance into a new healthy space. And so I have been developing a teacher course, a teacher certification with some very experienced teachers, as well as people that have been consulting with me on this in a professional and non-professional capacity. I have been conducting research from parents and students and all of that. I have done hundreds of hours of research. Everything I do is based in dance education research, and there is research to back up how what I am doing is good for the students, good for the teachers, and good for the environment to create a healthy learning space. And so I am passionate about raising teachers, not just dancers, but also teachers, to have a good, healthy environment. And that starts with you. You yourself have to be healthy and happy and truly content with what you have. I'm going to get into this in another episode because it's got to be talked about. But I am truly happy and content with where my career has led me. And yes, there are moments where I miss the stage and there are moments where that happens. But for the most part, I can truly and honestly say I love my dance career and what I have brought. And yes, I didn't always get to the places and spaces that I wanted to get to, but I'm where I am today because I found a new passion. I found a new dream. I found a new love for dance in a different way. And I am passionate for building resilient dancers and empowered dancers, and also empowering teachers and empowering them with the tools they need. I really love to mentor and raise a new move of thoughtful dance educators, and that is my passion. That is why I do what I do. The teachers I've had, the experience I've had has led me to this. And so my mission at Life On Pointe is very simple. Let the honor of the craft and your art speak in a way that brings joy. And if it doesn't bring joy and it brings drama and it brings all these problems, then get out of that, because that is not what dance and art is. It is a message, it is a story, it is joy, it is love, it is so many things that so many people don't take the time to recognize anymore. And so at Life On Pointe, we specialize in very specialized career training. We teach a method that is based on dance science and dance education and melding the two together to create something that is healthy for the brain and the body. We've already seen just in the last season impact in fine motor learning, in the growth of girls that have autism and other learning disabilities. And we've seen how this framework that has been created actually can transform in a really beautiful way. And so I'm so excited to continue talking about dance education through this podcast. I have paid content, I have non-paid content, I have so much content for you. I have resources for parents that are coming soon, and we are about to start our 8-part series of resources for parents. That is the number one thing that is missing in this place. So I just want to say thank you for listening to my story. I hope that you are just as passionate about art and education as I am, because if you are in the right place, thank you for being part of my story, for listening, and I am so excited to continue on this journey with you. Please subscribe and share this podcast with anyone that you think might need this. This could be helpful for anyone. Please share this. And on the next episode, I will be sharing on dance studio politics. I've had so many questions about dance studio politics over several years, by the way. And I've done a lot of research on why this happens, what it is, how to overcome it, how to deal with it, how to deal with the pressures, why it's good in building mental resilience, but also why it's breaking down and burning out your dancer. So that is a little teaser of what we are going to be talking about next time. So tune in for that. At the end of the day,
We are all human, and we are human first, as Lazy Ballerina Club says. So thank you guys so much for listening. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you guys did, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to this channel, rate and review this podcast, however it happens, and I will see you all in the next one. Have a wonderful night, everybody. Cheers.